Welcome to the J3U University Podcast. I'm your host, John Jewett.
And I'm your co-host, Luke Miller.
Our mission is to elevate the physique coaching standard
and to bring the highest level of competitor to the stage.
Let's jump into today's episode. The coaching mistakes you don't know that you're making. And sometimes these can just be misreads, and we're specifically talking about peak week here. Is that when it is showtime and your coaching eye has to be really dialed in? And there's several things here that can just lead you to misreading and making the wrong call and putting a physique on stage that ends up being worse for kind of reading in the wrong direction. So Luke and I want to go through kind of the big piece on peak week of the coaching eye and gauging someone from flat all the way up to spilled, and what you need to know and do about it.
Yeah, it's really kind of a testament to how you run your prep process as well. I think that's kind of where all this starts, is like what led into the peak? How did that data collection happen across a peak week, and how early were you ready so that the peak week's not, or doesn't have to be as drastic as it could be. And I think that's kind of like the first place to start, because in my opinion, your assessments become more accurate of what's flat, what's full, what's nailed when you have that prep dynamic that leads into a pullback 2 to 4 weeks out. You do some testing and then you actually run the peak week, because they're not changing in one direction or the other really fast, and you're not chasing them or watching them plummet really fast either. You kind of get past that in the prep portion of the scenario, and going into peak week, it's a lot more stability to be able to kind of create an assessment profile that's easier to assess.
Yeah, I think you're right. Having an assessment is key. And I had an awesome moment on Instagram, because I put up on a reel about waking up on show day and not knowing what you're looking at. And I don't know if you saw this comment by Bill Sylvia. He's one of the head IFBB judges, and he's basically was saying, like, when we see someone on stage, we have no way to say that they're flat or they're spilled. Like, we can't tell that. We just know you're soft. So like, you need to be able to like discern that, which was a really cool insight from like a high level judge. Cause I can tell you how many judges I've heard tell athletes you're flat or you're full, but truthfully, just one visual is really hard to tell. Maybe unless you're like a very trained eye or so, you know that person a little bit. But again, if you're the coach and you're just having a one visual, like at some random times a day, and you don't have any other data you're using, and you haven't been that meticulous with it, it could be very hard to say, like, where are they? Like, I just know they're softer, but I don't know what to do about it. And that's just like these judges that can see it too. Like, you're soft. You just need to not be soft. Like, is that you're flat? Is that you're spilled? Is that you need to lose body fat? Not quite sure to say. Just go fix it. But that's where the data kicks in, right?
Yeah, and I think that's I think what that allows us to do is create. We talked about matrices multiple times in the past. I think those matrices will help you start to be able to understand why someone's going flat, or where you're getting close to flat versus full as you build that. And I think kind of the question that I would want to ask is, like, what are you solving for when you're trying to set a client up? And I think if we answer that question of like, what is the problem we're trying to solve, it kind of leads us into what does that assessment process need to look like. And I like to see this on the extreme end ranges. So the problem we're solving is, what's the tipping point? What's the tipping point of the visuals on the low end or the high end, or both? And so you'll see me, like, a lot of times when I know the dieting portion's done with people, get pretty aggressive on ripping back fatigue and then loading them, as long as I feel like they're not an athlete that's going to get pretty sticky on me. So like, I'm going to put food in, they're going to stay up there, because I want to see, like, where do I start seeing those visuals start to skew? So I start to create what I'm thinking the top portion of my matrix is. And that comes with photos kind of throughout the day. So a lot of times my athletes will chuckle when they hear this. Like, it might be 3 days of loading, and it's like fasted visuals, post-workout / midday visuals, and then pre-bed visuals. And then that'll be done across all 3 days of loading. And what I'm doing here is like finding the tipping points through the day, but also finding the tipping points from a weight perspective, and seeing like if it's truly full or if it's truly flat. Because you might see like, let's say a 200-pound bodybuilder fasted upon wake on day one might hit 207 by bed, and then by day 3 might be 207 fasted, and that 207 fasted might look way sharper than a 207 bed because of the dynamic of like fluid and sodium and food that's gone in throughout the day. And so then you're starting to get really accurate information of like, where is that tipping point for that person, and different portions of the day kind of creating that dynamic. And so that's where I start. I don't know if that's where you start, of like finishing the job on the prep and then finding the extremes. That's a lot of times where I try to start with people.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we start monitoring people, and I do it too.
Yeah.
Not just on peak week, but the week before, even the week a little earlier, if they're already earlier, a few different points of the day to start seeing where those visuals will move to, and then correlating it to body weights. And I think to make it a bit more elemental too on reading this, because I think flat to full or flat to, even spilled, it's weird. I feel like some people had asked me a question around like, what do you do when you're spilled? Because I used to think spilled as well was kind of like this permanent state. Like you're kind of screwed once you got there. But flat doesn't have that perception though. It's like, oh yeah, you just need to eat, have some fluids, and like you'll like come back. But it always felt like spilled was like you just dive off this cliff and all of a sudden you're spilled and you're like, oh, that's it, I've spilled. But it's like, I want everyone that's listening to understand, like, all these are very easily shifted, relatively easily shifted, depending on what you did. But it's a spectrum that you're working within. So have someone waking up, usually you didn't have fluids and you're going to be flatter, which we should just define, what is flat to begin with, which typically someone's going to be more dehydrated, maybe went through some glycogen, so the muscle's not as full, but usually that means they're going to be lighter in body weight as well. And usually that person will visually look smaller, and they might not look as hard because of that. Then from the subjective, how the person might feel, they like flex their bicep or their quad, it might be hard to feel those contractions. Like they can't really feel themselves posing. So this is like the start of that flat look. But then as they eat and as they have fluids, they store glycogen, they rehydrate the muscle, they start to get fuller. And then you start to see the visual of this balance of where the muscle pushes, gets the skin right. Now you see more detail. They still haven't had like any condition loss, and you have that strike of like full and hard. And body weight's going to be higher because if you stored water and glycogen, it's going to be weight on the scale. That's why scale weight is pertinent here. We keep going throughout our day, right? And we get to the evening, had a lot of food, a lot of fluid. You're fully loaded in glycogen, but also that you're starting to see some shift of fluid into around body parts that are starting to lack condition now. Technically, this would be like you're starting to be spilled is how we term it, right? And so you go to sleep, you wake back up, and look, you're not that spilled look anymore. You're like back to being tighter. And at night, you're going to be heavier. It just makes quite clear sense. Now there's going to be some shifts, right? Across, like if you ate different foods or cut out fiber, like that weight range might shift around a bit. But another thing that I should bring up, this isn't body part specific, right? Yeah. Maybe you want to address that. Like just being like, so I said, so I forgot what was the question it came from, but basically it's not a, even though you're on a spectrum, it's also not a systemic flat or a systemic full necessarily, right? Yeah. That's going to dictate like, well, you're a little flat in your chest. Oh, don't go on stage like that. It actually might be better to go on stage like that for a reason.
It might be full everywhere else, right? Like it's like the dynamic of strong body parts versus weak body parts. We talked about this talking about your peak week, like the assessment process when you get really good at it. It's like, and a client, it's like, I really just need 2 poses from you, buddy. Like we talked about this, like trying to make check-ins easier throughout peak week so that they're not doing their full rounds of posing every time they check in with you. It's like there's telltale body parts of like, man, when someone starts going flat, this really starts to kind of look really skinny and really like stringy and just not pop and not have the separation. And then on the flip side, like there's those body parts that it's like as you start to get into the fuller side of the metrics, it's like it really starts to get like a little fluidy and it's becoming a problem, like trying to be able to see the detail that athlete's actually dieted down for. And those body parts are like really important to pick out, in my opinion, because I'm running 5 peaks this week. And so one of the athletes, Jared, it's like pretty telltale sign of like if he's flat from the front, it's like chest, shoulders, it's like not the best look. Because it's always going to be too flat systemically. Because if I look at just the back shot, he's a men's physique guy. It's like flat versus full from the rear is like, it's a little different, but it's really not that big of a difference because it's such a strong body part. It's like you could go on stage, like his weight range is like it's like a 3.5 pound weight range. He could go on stage 190 to 194 and the back shot would look almost identical. But the front shot would be drastically different. And so this is where when you get in your assessment process, like you got to be very aware that maybe not every pose looks drastically different, but some absolutely will.
Do you think it changes by the type of physique as well? I mean, like,
yeah.
I think of like Sean Clarita, right? Like he sends me his fasted shots and Sean's flat looks below and full, right? So like for that type of person, I know like, man, he needs just a little bit of food and that's it. Or he's also the guy that could get really spilled because of that too. Mm-hmm. Or you have the guy that's, doesn't have the round full muscles and probably needs a lot more load to like get that shape back because it's just flat is quickly seen in that type of, how the muscles lay.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
A question too. How does inflammation or stress like masquerade as spilled or fat? Do you think people make a mistake around that?
Yes, 100%. I think this is where, all right, this is actually a great example. One of my peaks this week is Charbel. He's on week 4 of competing. So we've got 4 weeks in a row of competing, right? Train legs on Monday. He told me, he was like, I told him I wanted him to train legs on Sunday. He was meeting up with people on Monday. And he was like, can I just train it Monday? I was like, sure, but don't go too far. Don't go too hard. Now, he's really good at not doing that. But I think just the combination of like 4 countries in 4 weeks with the travel, a leg session on a day later than we would usually do. It's like he's looking at his visuals like one day ago, so 2 days out. He's like, this looks nothing like last week. Like I look like a water buffalo. It's like stressing him out. That leg inflammation's there. His legs still feel heavy. We're trying to make weight. Sure enough, like we wake up this morning, we hit a new low in order to make weight. And then I plug in fluids and sodium and food back in to bring them back up after we make weigh-ins. And it's like sharp Charbel is back to life. And like really the only difference here is a massive drop in inflammation that could have really skewed my assessment process if he wouldn't have had that leg day be far enough away to drop the inflammation. Now, this inflammation stuck around longer than it had in previous weeks, which is where then the athlete management side becomes important because you need to communicate that like, hey, not every week's going to be the same if some variables are different. And so for me, it's like, that's kind of where you have to be, and you talk about this, like tracking your leg visuals post leg day so that you know where the leg inflammation drop off happens so that you can then plan the last leg day. Like that's the inflammation portion of it that I see like get done.
I think it's good. That's why we do track daily weights and then some fatigue markers. Mm-hmm. And because, remember this, like water moves fast, fat moves slow. So when you have like a quick jump in weight or a quick drop in weight, these are usually water fluctuations, right? And If you have just someone that's slowly trending down, usually this is going to be more fat related. So if we're able to look back, if like someone checks in, their weight's way up, you're like, oh dang, what happened? We look back on a particular day where we see like maybe they train legs, then over the next 2 days you see like weight kind of quickly spike, and then it drops. That can be some indications around what type of weight you're looking at, and then it might give you better insight into the visuals that you are looking at. If say their check-in did come around, leg day time. It also, like, I just like to ask clients too, like when you notice a change in weight, that's kind of the anomaly, like have some like introspection and try to think on where do you feel the weight? Like, I don't know, when I wake up and I'm heavier, I'm like, is it in my legs? Do my legs feel heavier? Am I like walking through sand, concrete? Do I feel more bloated, like GI? Are my hands and feet kind of tight, like I'm holding water or sodium? Like, did I sleep crappy last night? So I can give some idea of like where that weight is kind of being contributed from. And then that's what you can report to coach. Hey coach, my legs feel like super heavy today. Maybe that's it. But just so you can kind of disseminate where this might be the issue. But if you're the coach that's just, taking the visuals every so often, fasted, and you come in at peak week and, they look softer, and you're like, oh, damn, weight's up. Like, I think I need to like dig them down. But what if they just need a rest instead? Like, it's quite easy to make that misread and make the wrong call. Maybe another misread is assuming your client always does what you want them to. So this could probably go either way, right? Like flat or full.
Yeah, it could.
Or flat or spilled, wake up and you check in and it just doesn't add up. You're like, what's going on here? Sure, that's happened to you, Luke. Thanks everyone for tuning in to today's podcast. Are you struggling to hit your peak on show day? Feeling lost in the off season? Upgrade your coaching game with J3U University. Our program covers everything from off season to contest prep to peak week, all based from real client results. Along with our comprehensive physique curriculum, you'll also get access to our 4 rooms with our J3U team to answer any questions you have, and live Q&A sessions to further your coaching and athlete experience. We are the source of education for top IFBB pros and coaches. Join us to elevate the coaching standard at J3U University. Let's get back to today's podcast.
Oh yeah, it's for the sake of the clients that it's happened with, we're going to not share any stories or names, but it certainly has. Like, I can think of a few where it's like you find out after the fact that things got dropped in, and it explains like a large drop overnight. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's like, I mean, at this point when you're tracking, it's like clockwork. Like, the overnight drops between, let's say, 5 and 6 pounds for this person. Very rarely does it get outside 5 to 6 pounds. Like, it's maybe in that like super bad night's sleep, it's like kind of sticky and doesn't drop, or it drops a little more, but it's not that far gone. And when you have someone that's like does that 6 days in a row, and then on the 7th drops 10, it's like, okay, like this doesn't add up, right? And then if you combine that with the visuals looking flatter and not as sharp, so it's certainly something that you would hope that the client would be honest on the forefront. Unfortunately, due to the nature of contest prep and the psychological state that people are in, it's not kind of the honesty that you always get. And really the system that has to be accounted for is on the back end when you do the peak review, because that's a lot of times where you'll get told, and then you'll understand how that metric didn't add up, and then you go from there. I will say, not being quick to play the blame game is an important part of coaching. So just because something doesn't make 100% sense doesn't mean that it's necessarily your client's fault. That's the caveat I would make with this area.
Yeah, there's just a right way to go about speaking to a client, and with humility and from a place of just wanting to make everyone better, without just trying to just throw it on them. Just assume they followed it, but also be open always to anything that might have gone in that you didn't want to. So I've seen it all. I've seen, extra food go in, higher output put in just because they're emotionally driven by not wanting weight to go up and chasing condition. I've seen like diuretics have gone in. So you name it, it can happen. So that's why if you're tight with your data tracking, you can catch some of that stuff. I think the minor ones are the ones that kind of slip through where you're like, it could just be the normal fluctuations that we see, but it happened.
Yeah.
Which those are the frustrating ones. I will say from being on the coaching side, when you find out something like that happens, like it really dampens your trust in someone to like what else is happening. Like, gosh, I don't know. And that's when I'm quicker to like let a client go for it. But from the client aspect, just come out and be honest and just be apologetic if it is happening, but it's what you're doing this to get better and your coach to help you. So just be forthcoming with it. And if you have a good coach, they won't judge you because they've been there and probably done it themselves too at some point.
Where they've had so many people do it to them. They're like, yep, par for the course. Let's just fix it moving forward. Like it's just, I'm at that point where it's just like, all right, cool. Let's learn from it. This is why we don't do it. This allows me to do my job if we do X, Y, Z. Let's just focus on doing that on the next steps forward. It's just that kind of short form version of that conversation. I did want to ask though, like we're getting into the assessment process and we're getting into all this, like, is there one portion of your assessment process for peaking, whether it's yourself or your clients, that is a non-negotiable? Like it's one of those, it's like clients want to leave out or they forget and it drives you nuts. And it's like, this is what my whole process hinges on primarily. I need you to just stay on top of this. Like, what is that thing for John?
It's funny to say it. The basics, just sending a picture on time when I need it. There's all the data to track alone, right? Like, hey, I want body weight and whatever. But just to not even get a picture or a check-in at a time when I could use it is also kind of the non-negotiable. I really need to make sure it happens, which seems like that would be something different. But I've had all of a sudden clients like kind of ghost you during their peak week because they're just busy running around, getting tan or whatever, and then they just don't check in. And they're like, what'd you do? Well, I was like, I just followed the plan you laid out. I was like, well, that's kind of a tentative plan I have. So I guess that was definitely one of them. I have definitely off that changed a lot of things to where I have like meal times listed. Like it's all very specific, right? Like I have a tentative plan now because I used to not even do that because it stresses clients out if they're out, it's technology issues and they can't get to me, or then there's assumptions made. Well, I'll follow what was from yesterday. It's like I'd rather have like a laid out plan. Everything's there, like water with meals, between meals, sodium, the time you should be eating, the times they should be checking in, because that's another one too. Is maybe these are more pet peeves than non-negotiables.
Yeah, I don't know about non-negotiables. We're talking about John's soapbox at the moment.
Yeah, like hey, if I put it like 30 minutes before a meal, I want pictures and check in, and so meals at 12 p.m. like 11:30, I should be getting pics. So I have that like listed out. So especially with my like overseas clients, where I wake up, I'm like like your meal's at 3 a.m. It's like, all right, send it at 2:30. I tell them 2:30 a.m. and you will hear from me by 2:45. That way I have this window.
I think I'm so giggly because this is me this week. I have Australia, 2 in Germany, 2 in Canada. So I'm on like just the worst time zone rotation I could possibly be on. And like I'm on 2 hours of sleep right now because of a make weight situation that was a lot tighter than I wanted it to be. But man, it's just like you're just sitting there waiting for that check-in and you're just like staring at your phone. And you're like, where is it? Where is it? Like, I want to go take a nap, but I need to make sure that you're where you need to be. It happens so often.
Have you ever missed one? Just like fell back to sleep?
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
it's okay. Admit it, Luke. I've done it too.
I've done it.
It's hard.
Bad.
It's
and the worst is like the worst one that happened was I had my alarm set and my alarm was going off next to me while I was still sleeping through it.
Man, you must have been so tired.
It was bad, but no, we're good this week. And I haven't done that in a long time, but I'm better at managing it now because like a lot of the athletes I've worked with for a long time. So they're very predictable. It's like, it's a lot harder to do those peaks with newer athletes where you're not exactly sure how this peak's going to go. Even if you have the data collection, like you don't know like how anxious they get at shows. Do they pace? Like, do they, those things. So, this year it's been like a breeze because all of my internationals have just been so easy to manage that it hasn't been hard at all.
One thing on misreads, and I know mine, that used to be more of a problem, but when you open a check-in, do you have anything you go to first to not like make any confirmation bias sink in, or have you noticed that's ever been present for you?
The guys I'm a little bit, I can definitely say wellness and bikini, let's say wellness bikini, more bikini. It's definitely a little bit more of a harder one for me to be objective quick like that, because I'm like, in the bikini class, the visuals are a lot harder to discern. I like to remove myself from it and get in front of a laptop or a desktop and just assess. Where like with the guys, like most of them, it's really easy to tell where their details are going out or where they're coming in, like where the fullness is dropping off. Wellness becomes a little bit easier to assess. The hard part with wellness is matching them to the class standard. So like those ones that are like, you don't just rip them all the way and then bring them back to life. Those are the classes that are the hardest to like do off the cuff. I like to remove myself because as a bodybuilder, my bias is always like, let's get fucking shredded and then let's just like ring you back up. I'd say like, and I'm hoping that's what you're asking for, but that's definitely my pre-bias is like in those classes where the criteria for conditioning is not ripped like all the way down, like arguably even figure is this too now. It's like you got to be really careful with how you go through your assessment process because you could do everything right and put the physique you want on stage, but your confirmation bias of what you're looking at in the picture doesn't match the class criteria.
No, okay, no, that's good. You took that a different way than my issue that I've run into.
Oh, okay.
And so, but that's good too because it's also I think an emotional bias around what you like on stage.
Yeah.
Versus what the division actually requires, right? So
yeah,
you're probably already goes in quicker to want to push someone.
Mm-hmm.
Than like hold them or be a little bit more reserved with fat loss, right?
Yeah. I think it's why I lean so heavily on the timelines and the preps because I know I'm going to get the job done and I know I'm going to make the look fresher and I know I'm going to make the volatility less by running preps that way, and it makes it super predictable.
The way I was thinking about it was trusting feedback too much sometimes. And so
I've learned that the hard way. God, that is such a hard lesson.
The bias gets created from the client. And so I open up the check-in and I read through their feedback and then I look to their visuals and now I'm searching for that in the visual. And it's going to be quicker to probably find that and it can lead you to make the wrong calls. Like, or the client, like if you're the client, you're like, man, coach, just really feeling hammered today. Like my legs are heavy. I couldn't get a pump at all in the gym. And it's like, all right, let me refeed you for 3 days. It's like, that's what you want, right? Cheat meal. It's like, yeah, I don't think so, buddy. But I think even as a client, you probably know when you're trying to like cue up your coach to like give you some extra food.
Fish it.
Or do whatever it is, like, yeah, coach, this prep's easy. I'm ready to smash and go harder up the cardio, or whatever it may be. So you're looking at reasons why in the visuals, like, oh yeah, no, they are more conditioned. Yeah, we should pull them back and refeed or whatever it may be. So, or even looking at a body weight first. I think that could be a lot for certain people, like whatever direction it heads, like body weight takes too big of a jump. If it's like off season or even in prep, too small of a drop. And you're like, oh man, all right, they're not going to look that different. We're going to need to push them.
Step on it.
And then you already have that in your mind when it might be just something we just talked about, like just the anomaly of weight shifting up from a leg training session and they're still trending right. Or I know we're talking about peak week, but off season, I have like Colton, right? Taking big post-show jumps that are like, whoa, this is faster than we normally would go to gain weight. But then you look at visuals, you're like, oh, well, okay, keep doing it. So I think you really have to like just remove yourself. And if you're trying to make the quick call and you feel like some bias coming in, look through all the data and then through everything, then make your decision of which route you want to go.
If you want to try to avoid that feedback loop, is remove yourself from the client dynamic. What I mean by this is like if you're one of those coaches that likes to be at shows, just take yourself out of meeting with the client. Like meet with the client, get the visuals, have that in-person interaction, but don't sit there and do the meals while you're in the room. Like get out of that environment and then go do it elsewhere where you can be more objective.
I think just throw one more question at you and we'll wrap it up, Luke. Okay. Is how do you develop the eye to read photos more accurately?
God, why did you give me like the most broad question you could ask? Like, I don't know, go to as many shows as you possibly can in different stage lightings and have to assess people in like the worst backstage lighting you've ever seen in your life. A lot of it has to do with correlating lighting with your photos. And that's a very convoluted way of understanding that. I'm all for fasted photos need to be the same every week. That is a staple. However, I think as a coach, you are missing out on part of the assessment process if you don't ask someone to take photos in different spots throughout the later portions of prep and like especially kind of leading into peak week when you're trying to do ideal visuals from afar. And the reason being is because if the camera is too far, they can look harder than they actually are. If it's downlighting, they can look harder than they actually are. If it's a extremely pale individual in sunlight with a close camera, they can look softer than they actually are. It's like those variables matter, right? And so training your eye, there's an in-person component that I think that's hard to replace. But I do think like having the multiple lightings while the fasted stays the standard is like a great way to try to start to pick up on like a trained eye skill of the variations in the look throughout the day, but also the variations in the look in different lightings and settings.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think seeing stuff in person makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
To really be able to train the eye, because if you're only doing this online, that's all you've ever experienced, it can make it pretty tough. But if you are doing online, like you said, being able to see them in different lighting, because we'll all have the client that sends the gym photos and they're like, man, I look amazing in the gym. And if sometimes I've had clients that is where they check in, right? For whatever reason, that's like they have access to that, right? Fast in the morning. And you're like, all right, this looks really good. But then, you know, like that might be a bit harder than what there actually are. Yep. So in Tampa, I was like, okay, I got to capture this because it's going to be a great teaching tool. And I put, just so you all know, like in level 1, like Luke and I have a lot of visuals resources to understand changes in lighting and tanning and everything. So we show you these, but I took one in Tampa, like in front of my bathroom lighting, like yellow lighting that I was standardizing. Then I went to the window, natural lighting on me, same shot. Then I stood next to the window with half natural light and put all three together, and it looks like completely different physiques, relatively, right? Like half natty light, I looked hard as nails. Direct natural light, like I look pretty smoothed out. Then my other normal check-in light, it's kind of a balance of the two, but not nearly anything like that half natty light. So, but literally the same time component. So if that's your check-in, you could think someone's really on or really off. So
only post the half natty light. but assess with all three.
What do you want to end up?
Yeah.
You're either going to you miss your peak if you post the good one, which that's what happened when I post that shit.
Yeah.
And then the other one is that, you're not going to get any traction on Instagram because you just have shitty photos. But then you looked amazing. Whatever you did, your peak worked out. So
the social dynamic of bodybuilding. Man, we went through a lot today. Is that pretty much it? I think that's kind of covers everything from a takeaway perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. There's with judging the look, it does take a trained eye, and it's something to develop over time. And just trying to not misread as a coach comes a lot down to putting time into your athletes. And I think that's a lot what is missing nowadays in coaching, that we're not giving each athlete all the trekking time that they need prior to their peak week. And then peak week, you try to go all in or not, but ends up, you just don't have anything to go off of to make the right calls. So that's why modern day, like bodybuilding coaching, like it is extremely involved and time consuming, and you should feel nearly like you're your coach's only athlete at times during those final weeks, because it does take that much attention.
Yep.
But anyway, we'll end it here. We're like skipping out of this contest prep peak week for next week, and we're going to talk about scaling off-season PEDs.
Drugs.
So should be
drugs,
should
guys.
be a popular
drugs.
All right, well, thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you next time.